Hey everyone, Leo with the Dreaming Tree, and welcome to the assembly video for our Dahlia flower. This is one of the 3 all-new flowers from our latest bundle. And this one's kind of cool because of the little planter or the vase that comes along with it. There's actually 2 little places for 2 flowers, and then we have 1 little shorter spot for a little electronic tea light. So it's definitely unique. And we're going to start off with something simple, and that is putting together the actual vase. Okay, so we've got these 3 sections here, and we're putting some gold panels on these sections. And what you'll notice is that, well, I have all of my pieces here, and I actually ran these through an embossing machine, which looks really cool. So what we're going to just need to pay attention to here is the series of little score marks that are in, well, they're on these surfaces here, because some of these you won't need to put any panels on because they're going to be kind of hidden and they're going to be kind of touching each other. Let me show you the prototype so I can actually describe visually what I'm talking about. So you can see these 2 sections here are kind of pressed up against these 2 sections here, so we don't need anything down there. They're a little bit shorter, and then you've got one that's going to be super short here. So anyway, we'll go through all that as we get these all glued down. What I would suggest doing is just taking your panels and placing them kind of like you're doing a little puzzle, placing them in the correct spot. And you'll notice that there are some that are not straight, but they're kind of curved on the bottom. We'll save those for, we'll save that one for the other piece there. This one here is going to take 4 of the same shaped ones there. Okay, now going to this medium-sized one, anywhere where you see there's little markers there, anywhere where you see like just little L shapes, those are going to be, they're going to have flat bottoms, just like this one. Okay, so this one's going to take 4 of these. They're all flat on the bottom. And then there's going to be one right here. You can see there's little V shapes there. This is going to be kind of a longer V-shaped one. So that's going to go there. And then the rest of these tall ones, obviously, you can see where those are going to go. That's going to go there. That's going to go there. That's going to go there. That's going to go here, and then we have a long one that's kind of curved, and then we have a short one that's kind of curved. Okay, so I do want to glue these down while everything is flat, because it just makes it a lot easier. So that's what I'm going to do. Now, this is obviously very self-explanatory. You do have markers to help you with the positioning of all of these pieces. So it's not really, you don't have to follow along with me if you don't want. I am going to just go through everything and share some tips along the way. But once you see, if you're scrubbing through and fast forwarding, once you see me pick these up and start to add glue to these actual tabs here, you can resume and continue watching as I go through that assembly. But this should only take a few moments. And I just finished the first set of flowers that I did from the new bundle were the cone flowers, and those came out really nice. I still have them sitting on my little photo table over there because, as I mentioned in the last video, you're not going to run into this. It's not a problem. It's just part of the process. But I mentioned in the last video that sometimes when it comes to actually making the arrangement, once everything is put together, you kind of want to put it in there and just leave it alone, walk away for a minute, and look at it with a fresh set of eyes, because we were staring at that flower for quite some time. Okay, so I've got all 4 in place there. Again, just using the little markers to guide me. So anyway, you go back to it a short while after you get everything done and take a look at it, and if it looks great, great. And if it doesn't, if you feel that you want to kind of adjust some of the flowers, you can. And that's true in, doing actual flower arrangements with real flowers. But anyway, this one is definitely unique. Another thing that I mentioned in the previous video for the cone flowers is that you can absolutely make these flowers and put them in a vase that isn't made out of paper. So I know I personally like to go to like Home Goods, or sometimes not so much Target, but Target has some vases that you can purchase as well. And you can actually put these flowers in something more, you know, more, well, just something out of a different material, I guess. So I'm just going down the row here. We already had them all lined up, so we know where they're going. Again, I ran this through an embossing folder. Okay, so I'm just putting the last one on here. And as I mentioned, I actually ran, this is gold foil, ran it through an embossing machine with a nice, I think this is by Tailored Expressions. Not even sure if this embossing folder is even available anymore. Let me see if I can find it here. Yep, here it is. This is what I ran it through. It's called Twirls and Swirls by Tailored Expressions. I've had that one for a little while. So again, you can try to Google it and see if you can find it. Can't guarantee you will, but I've seen a lot of varieties of embossing folders that look very similar to this. So I'm sure you can find something that will work. But again, just kind of going down the row here, getting all these glued down. Every little section has little markers to help you with the positioning. Just again, there's a possibility that you'll get it lined up with the markers, but it could still be off a little bit and not centered up towards the top. So do give it one more kind of overall glance and make sure that everything is sitting nice and straight, nice and centered all the way up. Okay. And the flower itself is not a difficult flower at all. It's actually quite repetitive as far as the structure and just the overall look and feel. But once you get all the layers together, it is quite dazzling. Actually, I can show you what it looks like here. You can see how beautiful that looks. Okay, so we're going to make one of those. We're going to make a total of 2. I'm going to show you how to make one of them, and then you can just rewind and watch it over again if necessary. But I think after you do the first one, the second one will go pretty easy for you. It's not that difficult at all, especially if you have a little bit of experience flower making. And even if you don't, I know you can do it. Just have to follow along step by step with me, and I'll get you through it. It's not very difficult at all, and I think you'll have a blast knowing that, well, hey, I can make paper flowers. Just have to make sure you've got the supplies, and the rest of it will be fun and easy, I promise you. Okay, again, just using the little markers there as I lay it down, just making sure that I've got it nice and centered as well. I've got one more large one, then a small guy, and we'll start putting this together. And the cool thing is, I'll share one more tip with you, so that you don't have to go out and buy a specific size electronic tea light. You probably have a stash of them at home at various heights and widths. We've created little, well, this is actually the little shelf that it's going to sit on. So if you don't have a short one, you can actually leave the shelf out and use a taller one. Okay, so we're giving you some options there. All right, so I'm on to the last one here. I'll get that in place and get that glued down just like that. All right, okay, so we've got all of our panels in place. Now we can begin just joining everything together. Very simple. What we're going to do is just take this tab, put some glue on it, and connect it to the other end to make it all one solid piece. So get your glue flowing on that tab, and then we'll take and spread that glue out to the very edge of the tab so everything looks nice and crisp and clean. You can actually lay this down flat and then take this side here and just fold it right over. Should fit on there perfectly. You don't even have to worry about making sure that you got it aligned properly. Make sure you don't have any glue on your hands or your fingers if you are using gold foil. because it is not very forgiving. If you get some glue on your foil, it's going to kind of blemish it a little bit. Okay, so there's that. You can flip this over, and we're going to close it up. So we have to put glue on these tabs here. And I'm going to go a little bit heavier with the glue here. I've got a couple of tabs to do. We'll spread that glue out to the very edge. I had a little more on that one, which I'm just kind of carrying over to the next tab. There we go. Just like that. And when we close this up, we want to focus on getting it lined up with this tab, the tab opposite of this one that's already hinged. So make sure you get that centered first, line that up nicely. And then the rest of them should just kind of fall into place. If you need to, give it a little bit of a push there. That's okay, totally normal. And just continue pressing down along the perimeter. And then you can flip it over. If you have a dowel handy, just go ahead and push that down. Just like that. Okay, now while we have this one here, we'll take one of these, and these are both the same, I think. Let me double check. Yeah, they're both the same. These are the little, kind of like a little shelf slash, this is where we're gonna put our flower in so it kind of stays put. If you want, now would be the time to put a little bit of like something heavy, like a fill, so that this thing is a little bit heavier. If you have like some little beads, or I guess you could use like food items like lentils or something, or just anything you have handy. With it being closed up, I doubt you're going to get any critters trying to poke in there. Otherwise, if you don't want to use, you know, something that's perishable, I would suggest, you know, just getting something from the craft store. So here's what we're going to do. It looks kind of weird, but we're going to start off by putting glue on just one of these. And I want to spread the glue out to the very, very edge of the top there, because that's going to be important for it to really stay nice and put. Okay, so we're going to slide that down, line it up with the very top of one of the sides, make sure it's nice and centered, and just press that up against the inside, like that. And then bring this back up, make sure that all the rest of them are lined up and they match up. Then what we can do is just take and fold it back like that. I'm going to bring it up for just a second, that's fine. Once we get this one in place, we won't have the luxury of being able to bring it up, but that's okay. Okay, just get your glue out to the very edge, and then pop it back in, make sure it's nice and lined up, nice and flush with the existing little scallop there, and then just press that into place. Okay, give that a few seconds to set. And now with the rest of these, we're just going to take and fold the flaps over like this. Since they're all kind of somewhat independent, you can just fold them over. I'm going to do it from this angle. Get your glue on there. Make sure you get it out to the edge, like so. And press that up against this piece here. Make sure everything is nice and flush. Just like that. Okay. And then I would go to the side opposite of the side that we just did, fold that down, apply your glue, again making sure you get it out to the edge, and then pop it into place, making sure it's nice and flush with the existing little scallop there. There we go, very simple. And then find the ones that are remaining here, and we'll do the same thing with this. Just going around. You get the idea here, obviously. And the process is going to be the same for the other one as well. I'll walk you through it. Here we go. Just get that nice and lined up. And I think I still have this one left here. Or do I? Yep, I think that's the last one. And I'll make a nice sturdy little shelf slash little flower holder so everything stays nice and centered for us. Okay, there we go. Wonderful. Okay, they're all done. So this piece is done. Nice and sturdy, especially with that top piece there. Okay, so we can move on to this guy here. Do the same thing. Just gonna get it closed up by applying glue to this tab here. Spread that glue out. Make it nice and thin. You don't want to overdo it with the glue because you're going to spend eternity waiting for it to dry. So you saw how I just laid that flat, grabbed the other side and popped it right on there. And we can do that because this piece is symmetrical. Press that down. There we go. And just like we did, there's really no difference here except that it's a little bit shorter. We'll get our glue on these tabs and we'll close the little lid. Nice and easy. Okay, let's spread that glue out to the very edge of each of these tabs. Okay. All right, and again, focus on getting it lined up with this side here. Get that nice and centered right out to the very edge. Start pressing that down and then take a look at the remaining sides. Make sure those are all lining up nicely, as they are. And just keep working your fingers around the perimeter. And then you can flip it over, grab your dowel, and press down on the rest of the tabs. Okay, make sure that everything is making good contact there at the bottom. If it's not, if you're seeing little gaps, which I am actually seeing some gaps, I'm not too thrilled with that, but you can grab a scrap piece of paper and just throw a little bit of glue right on the very edge of it, and you can slide it in between these two layers. Just paint a little bit of glue in there, right? And then just press and hold right in that section where you have a tiny little gap. I don't think it was that bad, but I'm kind of OCD, a little bit of a perfectionist, so I notice these things, and I know that if I don't fix it, it's not going to be as structurally sound. I want this to last as long as it could possibly last. I got another little gap there. I'm going to fix that. It happens. I don't know why it didn't happen with the last one, but I'm literally just painting some glue in there right on that section, and then we'll close it up and just hold it. And now it looks nice and seamless. Okay, so onto this piece here now, just like we did before. It's just going to slide right in. Okay, and we're going to glue. Let's start off by gluing it to one side to get it anchored. Throw your glue on there. Make sure you get some out to the edge. You can take it and just kind of spread it with your finger if you want. Make sure you wipe your finger off in between. I usually just have a little sponge underneath my desk. I wipe it off on. It's a dry sponge. I don't like to get it wet. Okay, so we'll line that up with the little scallop there, just like we did before. Make sure it's nice and centered. Make sure all the rest of them are going to sit nice and pretty. Okay, then we'll head over to the other side. We can pull it out a little bit and apply your glue to this tab. Try not to get it onto the visible surface there. Okay, tuck that in. And here we go. Make sure it's nice and flush. Give that a quick press. Shouldn't take long. As long as you're going easy on the glue, it should go really quick. Okay, so now we'll take this section here and peel it back. Throw a little glue on it, work your way out to the edge, and line that up. Now you notice that as I'm doing this, I actually have the texture side facing out, because you could technically do it this way where the smooth side is out. I prefer to use the texture wherever possible and make it visible. Okay, we'll go over to this side, fold this down, get our glue on there. Just kind of thin it out. It'll dry a lot faster. And line that up. Bring it up if you need to. You want it nice and flush and centered, obviously. Okay. Moving right along. There we go. And just line that up as accurately as you can. There we go. And what's left? I've got one here, I think. Yeah, I think that's the last one. Yep. Okay, so let's peel that back. Get your glue on there. And there we go. Nice and flush, nice and lined up. Perfect. Okay. So these two are done, and I'll show you how everything goes together here in just a minute. This guy is actually, it's going to go like this. Okay, we're going to glue these pieces together in just a moment. Okay, all right, so on to the last segment here, and the process is going to be exactly the same as we did the last two times. Go ahead and throw your glue on this tab. And just spread it out like so. I'm going to lay this down flat and then take this piece and press it right on there. Again, because it's symmetrical and six-sided, I can do that. Here we go. All right, pull that back. And let's apply our glue to these 5 tabs. Spread that out to the edge, nice and thin, and close it up. And then I'm actually going to leave that little shelf out because I've not yet decided on which candle I'm going to use. So I'm just going to leave it out. But you know how to put it in if you want to put it in, because we just did that with the other 2 pieces. So that is definitely something you can put in there if you want, or have you cut it out either way, because you're probably going to need it. And this glue is drying so quick, guys. And that's why I had the little gaps that one time. Okay, so just like we did before, when we close this up, align it with this section first. Get it nice and centered. Just like that, and then take a look at the remaining 4 sides. Make sure everything is nice and lined up, nice and flush, and then you can actually get your finger in this time. But I'm going to use my dowel and press up against the very edge, just in case the tabs are not making good contact there, which they should be, but you never know, because that glue is drying out real quick for some reason. I haven't had that problem all day. Okay, and yep, you can see a little gap there. So I'll grab my scrap piece of paper, throw a little bit of glue on there, slide it right in between the 2 layers. Just paint a little glue in there, wipe off any excess, and press that down and just hold that for a few extra seconds. I've got a nice big gap there. And again, that is because the glue was drying out real quick. So I'm going to fix that. And then we're going to go ahead and connect and join everything together. Let me see if I can get in here. I'm going to use this part first. Yeah, there we go. And just paint a little bit of glue in there. Just like that. You can kind of tell where there's resistance. You obviously don't want to shove this scrap piece of paper in there and destroy the parts that are glued. So just kind of stop when you feel the resistance and just apply the glue into the spots that really need it. I've got one more little gap here that I'm not a big fan of. So I'm going to fix that. And I know I show this tip all the time, but I just never know what your first video is going to be. Maybe this is it, and that's why I continue to show these tips. I also like to show you when I make mistakes and goof up, just so that you realize that it's part of it. It's part of the process. So again, here's the little shelf that we can put in there. Again, you can put the candle right in there as long as it's tall enough. Or if you just have a short candle and you want to add a shelf, you're going to glue that in there just like we did. Whoops, I did that wrong. Bring these up. I'm going to glue this in here just like we did the first two. Okay, it's going to go right in there. You're going to just glue that flush to the little scallops that are there. And now you have a nice little shelf. Okay, but I'm going to leave that out because I believe that the candle that I'm using is a little bit taller. All right, so with that said, the way that this is going to work now, and you can see that on the back of this we have two empty panels. Okay, so here's the tall one, here's the short one. The short one has nothing here at all, and it has a shorty here, just a half one. The one with nothing is going to go against this piece here. And we're just going to we're going to glue this together, but we're going to use our table to help ensure that we've got it in the right position. And then this guy, you can see there's two blank spots. That's going to go right there. That's going to make it all one piece. So what we can do, as I mentioned, this piece is going right there. So we're actually going to put glue on this entire section here. So let's do that. Let's get it nice and covered in the center. And then I'm actually going to work a little bit around the perimeter as well. And we are going to spread that glue out to the very edge on all sides because I want it to look very much seamless as possible. Okay, so let's grab that side. It's going on this side here. I'm going to use my table to help me. I just want to make sure that we get it centered like that. And then I'm pressing this part here with my thumb, and I'm pushing down here with my other thumb, and I'm going to keep holding that for just a few moments until I'm sure that that is totally in place. And that looks almost seamless there, and that's what we're looking for. All right, so now we're going to put glue on these two blank sections here, and that is going to go right here. Okay, so we want to cover this whole thing. I'm going to go, just going to do some little curly cues in the center. Okay, and then I am going to do a little bit of a thicker line around the perimeter on both of these so I can spread that glue out all the way to the edge. You should be able to spread it out without it crossing over onto any other surface there, okay? And again, using your table, keep it flat on your table, pop it right into that little corner and press that into place. Okay, well, the cool thing is we didn't put the shelf in yet, which is nice because now you can get your hand in there too. Okay, so everything should be nice and flat on the bottom. And just continue pushing that up against these two sections. What is that? Nothing. That's nothing to be worried about. Here we go. Okay, so there you go. That one kind of dried a little bit quicker since there was less surface area. It turned out pretty nice, I'd say. Okay. All right, so now what we can do, we actually have this piece here, and that's just to cover up the bottom, and that will actually make it more structurally sound as well. So let's go ahead and apply our glue. I'm going to go kind of heavy. Well, actually, I'm going to go kind of light in the center, and then I am going to go a little bit heavier around the perimeter. So I can take that glue and spread it out to the very edges. Should have had more glue there. It's okay. I can always go around a second time. Like that. And then we'll just pop this on. Doesn't have to be, just want to make sure that it's touching all of them. If it's off a tad, it's okay. Again, this is just to make sure that these really stay in place. I've got a dowel that I can use here, and I may need to go in and use my little painting method. You can see I've got a huge gap there. That's pretty much the only side that has the gap. So I'm going to fix that and clean that up nicely. Throw a little bit of glue like that. And we'll take it and just paint that glue right onto that surface there. As far as it'll go, you can tell where the glue did a good job and where it didn't. Okay, and then we'll just press that down and hold it right in that little area that just needed a little bit of extra love. And here we go. I actually have a little bit of a gap there too, so we'll fix that up. Hopefully that was enough. Yep, that was good. And then I've got a little gap there, no big deal. A little bit of glue and just paint that in there. Just go as far as you can before you start feeling that resistance, and press that down. Hold it. You can actually use your table too. And then just press down inside with a dowel. Let's take a look there. Yeah, nothing quite like a finger to do the job, I'll tell you. Okay. Okay, so I've got the first flower in there, and that looks awesome. Okay, so speaking of flowers, let's go ahead and put the flowers together now. You're just going to repeat this process twice. Now each flower is going to have a total of 3 different leaves. Okay, so I'll show you the leaves here. We've got 2 that are the exact same size, and then we've got this one that has 3 little leaves connected to it. We've also added, these are the little veins that we're going to actually glue to the leaves. Here is our calyx, and then we have it's kind of a 2-toned dahlia. We've got the purple, that's for the center, and then whatever color you want to use for yours. And we're going to actually, when we assemble this, we're going to assemble it from smallest to largest when it comes to these here. So what I did with these, and I'll kind of go over it real quick. So what I did ink the other one. This one's going to look a little bit better just based on the color. But I have my Memento inks here. This is a felt applicator. I have actually an entire video series on inking on our website. But basically I'm just putting a little bit of ink on my applicator. If you are new to inking and you want to try this just based on this video, what I would suggest is getting a scrap piece of paper and just making sure that you don't have too much on there, because it can create quite the mess. And then what I do is just kind of go around the edges of each of the flower sections and just apply a little bit of ink onto each one. Okay, now again, there's a lot of different ways to ink flowers, but that is how I accomplished that. I also did the same thing with the purple. I used a little bit of a darker purple for that. So there, I used grape jelly for that one. The idea is to take the color of the paper you have and find an ink that is just slightly darker. Okay, and I almost want it to look like the edges were kind of just, kind of kissed or burnt by the sun a little bit. And that's the idea here. Okay, and this little odd shaped thing here, I did also hit this with a little bit of purple as well. So everything's inked. The leaves I also inked with, this is a Gamma Green by Dewdrop, and it did basically the same thing, as well as the calyx. Just make sure that if you got brand new inks, sometimes they really saturate these felt applicators and you get way too much on there. Maybe that's what you want, and that's okay. I like my inking to be very subtle, a nice soft and even gradient. Okay, so that's kind of what I did there. Same with the calyx. The little veins I did not ink. Okay, but we are going to actually put those together real quick so that they can dry while we're putting our flower together. Okay, so obviously this piece here is going to go right on there. So let's get that glued down. I'd go easy on the glue here. Just do little dots if necessary, if that helps you control it better. Just make sure that you're getting that glue all the way out to the very edge of each of these sections. If you happen to have too much, you can always kind of hit it with your finger if necessary, and this is going to go right on top. So you want to match that up. I'd actually hold it from here so that you can see the very bottom. And whoops. And just pop that right into place like so. Okay, press that down, and we're going to give that some time to set. The leaves are going to be some of the last things that we actually attach to the flower, so it's actually good. But yeah, I would actually do all the leaves for both the flowers at the same time. You're going to ink if you want to ink. You don't have to, but if you're going to ink, you can do all the inking. Then you can put all the veins on. Again, just matching it up with the very bottom, like so. Okay, and pop that right on there. Press it down and let that set. You're going to make a total of 6 leaves, 3 for each flower. There we go. All the way down to the very end. And I need a little bit more. I have no glue on the tip of that, and I know that's going to come off if I leave it like that. Okay, whoops. Just line that up. Press it into place, just like that. Okay, so you're going to repeat that 3 more times with the rest of the flowers. The calyx is already inked. There's not much that we need to do to that, aside from training it, which we'll get to once we're actually putting the flower together. And it is that time, almost. One other thing too, I have this skewer, okay, and it's got a pointy tip at the end. Now on all of these petals, what I did is I took them, and with the tip, right at the tip of each of the petals, I just took and just kind of squeezed the petal around my little skewer, so that the tip of this kind of stays more pointy. Okay, just like that. And I'm just literally keeping the point of this right at the tip of the petal, and then just kind of wrapping the flower around it, and then kind of working my way up. Okay, and that's what we end up with. So you can see it's not really flat anymore. It's got a nice little curve to it. You can see it right there. Okay, so that one's flat, and that one's got a curve to it. And you can actually see the shadows and the highlights on that, especially with this one here. You can see how that works out. And the same thing applies to this one. It's just a little bit longer. I just pop that in there, and then I give it one squeeze right at the very tip as well. Okay, like that, and like that. And I pre-trained or folded most of these, so I wouldn't have to do the same thing, 40 times. And just go around and do the same thing for each of these petals, just like that. It gives them a really beautiful dimension. That's really gonna, once you put all these together, it's really gonna stand out and look awesome. If you try to just glue these together as is, it's not gonna be as powerful. It's going to look kind of dull, actually. Okay, so just going around. The smaller ones are a little bit easier, I think. The bigger ones are not hard. I think you're going to have to move your fingers around a little bit more. For example, I got to start down here, work up here, and then give it one more pinch here. So there's like 3 pinches instead of on the small ones where there's only maybe 2. Okay, so I'm going to do these small ones here with you, and these really tiny ones, it's probably just one little pinch, just like that. Okay, now as far as the centers go, you can do the same thing with the ones that are a different color as well. So everything gets the same treatment. Okay, I'm just going to go through and get all of these nice and trained, and somehow magically it's got some sort of a muscle memory or something. The paper just remembers that we did that, and it stays in that shape. And I mean, I have flowers that I made years and years ago that are still holding their shape, which is, to me, is pretty incredible. Okay, so just going through here and getting all of these sections of the flower nice and trained. And once you get into the rhythm, it goes pretty quick. So don't fret, it's not going to take that long. It's quite enjoyable, actually. You really get into kind of a zen or a meditation. I was listening to a podcast or something recently where some intellectual was calling, and I think it would apply to what we're doing here. This is like called deep work or deep concentration work, where you're really just super focused, hyper focused on one task, which I really enjoy. It's good for the brain. Okay, so now, all right, let's say you've got all of your flowers, and what I like to do is actually, let me see here, these two are the same size. I think there's 3 of them that are the same size. Let me double check. Yeah, so there's 3 that are super large. I think there are 2 that are a little bit smaller. And then we've got 2 that are a little bit smaller. And then we've got 2 more that are a little bit smaller. And then we have 2 more that are a little bit smaller. So we've got 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. A total of 10. Actually, no, there's 3 here. So we got 11 there. And then we've got these 2. These 2 are the same size. And then we've got this guy here. And we're ready to rock and roll here. So I'm going to grab my stem here. This floral stem is actually covered in like a craft paper. If you don't have that, you have just like an 18 gauge wire. You can wrap it with some extra floral tape, and that ought to thicken it up a little bit. Now you want to pick a tape that is similar in color to the actual leaves. Okay, I think that matches better, but I may have used a different color. Yeah, I think I might have used a brighter color. So I'm going to go with this one. Okay, and we're going to pre-wrap the stem so that we have at least 1 layer of green going all the way down. Okay, now as you're using your floral tape, you want to take and stretch it because there's a little bit of wax in there that we need to reveal so that it kind of sticks to itself. Okay, from what I understand and what I've been told, it's not an adhesive, it's just a very thin amount of wax. And that's what kind of holds it together. All I'm doing is I'm just kind of twirling, just kind of wrapping it at about a 45-degree angle all the way down. And we'll just cut it off there at the bottom. Okay. All right, so we've got our stem nice and wrapped. It's not going to need to be that long. I'd probably cut it in half right now, which I may actually do. Can save that for another project. I'm just trying to, maybe I'll leave a little extra just in case. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to start off with the actual stamen piece, this piece here. Okay, and it may help to take a nice thick dowel and just kind of train it. So what I'm doing is I'm putting it between my finger and the dowel, kind of bringing it up about 90 degrees and just running the dowel through it just to curve it a little bit. You don't need to curve it a ton. This is more or less just to help it wrap around the stem a lot easier. Okay, and what I would do is I'm going to throw just a little bit of hot glue right on the tip there. Okay, and I'm going to begin, I'm going to start off with this little section here, this little tab I'll call it, and we're going to get the tab right on the floral stem, right at the very tip. You want the top of this little section here. It's kind of like a little square that's connected to this, nice and flush with the top of the stem. Okay, so it's holding on now. You can see how that's holding on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a nice thin line of actual glue, just your regular glue that you use for everything else. Nice thin line all the way out to the edge. And what we're going to do is we're going to wrap this around itself, nice and tight. Okay, Okay, as tight as you can get it. Just go all the way around. And try to keep it nice and flush at the bottom, lined up with itself. And again, I'm kind of giving it a good squeeze just to make sure that it's nice and tight. And that's going to start the center of our nice dahlia here. Once we get to the end, just kind of keep holding it and make sure that that really gets a good hold. And of course, I let it go. Just keep on holding it there. Okay, don't let go. And if you let go and it's just not holding on, just throw a little hot glue in there. Hot glue will definitely do the trick. Just a nice little tiny bit of hot glue and close it up. Make sure it's nice and tight. And you feel that burn. Okay, there we go. All right, so that is the first part of the flower, like the nice center, nice and tight. Okay, now what we're gonna do, this is the only, I call, tricky part of the flower assembly. So these two are pretty much, they're actually identical. So just pick one. And I'm just gonna poke the hole in the center. There's a little cross in there already. It's kind of, it's already pre-cut. I'm just taking the pencil or a pen to kind of pre-drill it, so to speak. So it's a lot easier to get on the stem. Once we get it on the stem, I'm gonna take and bring it up, and I'm just gonna twirl this, spin it, and while I'm pushing up with my other hand to bring it up there. Okay, straighten that out. And what I'm gonna do, make sure that didn't tear, I'm gonna throw a little bit of hot glue right at the base of this piece here. Okay, so just nice thin amount of hot glue, spinning it as I'm applying the glue. Make sure you don't have any of those little frillies. We'll bring this all the way up as far as it'll go. Hopefully that hot glue is still nice and hot. There we go. Okay, so we've got that connected. Now what we're gonna do is try to create almost like a bud-like appearance with these. So we're really gonna bring these up and in. We want them to kind of look like this, like almost like this, the center of it is still kind of opening up. It's not completely open, right? And in order to do that, we are gonna have to apply some hot glue to these sections here to kind of keep them together. Okay, and I'll show you how I accomplished that with this one here in just a second. In the meantime, actually, what I do want to do, and what I just realized is with this part of the flower, I do want to add a little bit of ink on the underside because it is going to be visible. So it's okay if it's, you know, on the stem here. You can ink pretty much whenever. And I'm inking on the smooth side here instead of the texture side. So it is going to require a little bit more effort. Maybe, you know, maybe you need a little more ink on your pad. And I'm just hitting that with a little bit of ink just to make it a little more colorful and not so bland. That's nice. Okay, so here's what I did. I took it and I kind of squeezed it together and then I let it go. And then I took a look and just looking at the little petals here, I found where the petals were kind of touching naturally. And what I did was just throw a little bit of glue, and hot glue would probably be the way to go here since it's going to set a lot faster. Just throw a little hot glue on the very tip of one of these petals here. Okay, and then that's the part I was hoping wouldn't happen. And then take and press the little neighboring one right up against it so that it kind of sticks. Okay, that's going to help keep them all kind of up. Okay. Okay, so I'm just applying a little bit of hot glue right on the very edge of one of these petals. Petal that was right next to another petal that was just kind of naturally touching it when I kind of scrunched everything together. And now I'm going to press it up against there so that it kind of holds permanently. Okay. I can take these, I'm going to wait until this really sets. I can bring that in a little bit more. Okay, so now I'm going to kind of scrunch this together again and let it go and see where else I've got them kind of naturally. These two are kind of overlapping naturally, so I'm going to peel this one back a little bit and just throw a little bit of glue right on the tip of this guy here, just in one little spot, and then just twirl it around so we don't get any of those really little frillies, and then take this guy and just glue that right to the back side of this other petal. Okay, there we go. All right, and then you can actually, these two sections now, these two petals and these two petals are glued together. Now I can actually take them and squeeze them in a little bit more. I'm going to put a little bit of glue on this one here. Okay, and then I'll take that and glue that one to the inside of its neighbor there. And that's really going to kind of keep them all together. And if possible, if you have a little bit of that hot glue showing, if you can scrape it off before it sets, great. If not, it's probably not even going to be noticeable. So you see what's happening there? These petals are really standing up and they're kind of bunched together, which is kind of the effect that we're looking for here. It doesn't have to be perfect, and one of them could be kind of coming out, because naturally these are gonna, eventually they're gonna open up. They're in the process. Okay, let's get, I'm gonna grab this one here. Okay, this one here. These two petals, when I scrunch everything together, kind of naturally touch each other. So I'm gonna pull that one back. I'm just going to throw a little bit of glue right there on the very tip, the very edge of that one. Okay, twirl that around and pop that right on there and just kind of glue it to the neighbor. There we go. And that worked out nicely. And I think I could probably get away with tucking this one in and just bringing these in. Okay, so now these two that I just glued together, I'm going to glue those two to this guy here. Just a tiny little drop of hot glue there. Don't need a lot. Okay, just bring that in right over and press that down. All right, so moving on now, the rest of this is going to be a lot easier. We're going to take the next purple layer here, and again, I'm going to pre-drill a little hole there. There's a little X in there that's already cut into it. And this floral tape isn't staying for me. Bring that up. Just twist the stem as you're pushing it up to help it kind of get up there. And just before we get to the very top, we'll stop and throw a little bit of hot glue right at the base of the previous layer. Okay. And we'll bring this next layer up all the way as far as it'll go. There we go. Okay, so that's what we've got so far. So the center of it, that's the different color. That part's done now. Got more of these little wispies in here. Okay, now we are on to the main color here. Okay, so we're going to start with the smallest, work our way up to the biggest. And this process is, this is the fun part, because it's literally just feeding these through and getting them glued into place. Now, you know what I got to do here? Let me kind of wrap this all the way down to the bottom so that it doesn't come pulling away. After I cut it, I kind of started to come loose. Okay, so I've got the first layer here. Again, just kind of spinning it as I'm feeding it up. Okay, and just before we get to the very top, give yourself some room to get your glue gun in there. And just squeeze the trigger. You can just rotate it with your hand to apply the glue all the way around. Go very easy. You don't need a lot. And pop this guy all the way up as far as it'll go. And you want to offset the petals. Okay, so you don't want to put the petals right on top of each other. You want to offset them a little bit so they're in between the purple here, so that you can actually see them showing through. And you're going to do that every step of the way here. You want to make sure that we're offsetting these so that they really kind of, you know, fill in the entire area there. Okay, so moving on here, just gonna poke a hole in here. There's already, like I said, there's already a cross in there. I just like to kind of pre-drill, as I like to call it. We'll bring that up almost as far as you can go. And go ahead and put your glue on there. Just go to quick twirl. Go easy on the glue here. You don't want to make it too bulky because this stuff's going to dry pretty hard. Okay, and again, as I mentioned, I'm going to show you this way. I think it's easier to see. When I put this down, I don't want the petals right on top of each other like that. I'm going to rotate them a little bit and offset them so that they really fill out. And that's perfect. More frillies. Yeah, so you can see what we got going here. It's turning out very nice. And on to the next section here. Now we're going to the next largest size. Okay, now if you really want to be smart about this, you go through and just kind of pre-drill everything before you start applying them, so you don't really have to pick up the pen ever again. Okay, just keep them in order as well. You don't want to go out of order. Okay, moving right along. And then we've got the 3 large ones. This is totally optional. You don't even have to do this. You could technically use the floral stem to kind of pre-drill it before you pop it up. I've just found this to be a lot easier. And occasionally, if I use the stem to try to open up that hole in the center, I've ripped some of the petals before. So you don't want to do that. All right, so again, just make sure that you're going in order from smallest to largest. We'll bring this one up. Get your hot glue. Just throw it right around the base, just a little bit. If you kind of, you're trigger happy here a little bit and you get too much, it's okay. Don't worry about it. Just gotta push that up there. Again, make sure that you're offsetting the petals. Okay. There we go. Just like that. And if it's not completely perfectly offset, don't lose any sleep over it. You won't even notice it. Okay, so there we go. It's getting there. Now eventually, once we start getting into the larger sections of petals, it's going to kind of switch direction. Right now it's kind of going up. About halfway through, it's going to start making a transition downward. And if that's not happening for yours naturally, it's okay, because we can always go in and train the petals to come down. So it's not really the end of the world either. All right, next set of petals here. Bring them up the stem. And just before we get all the way to the top, just hit it with some glue. Nice and easy. Just kind of rubbing the tip on the stem to get rid of any of those potential little frillies. I'm not a big fan of those. Okay, and again, make sure that you're offsetting the petals. Bring them up as far as you can go. I now have probably 6 or 7 layers of hot glue holding this all in place, so I'm really kind of pushing on it. And it shouldn't go anywhere, and it's not. So I can really make sure that everything's nice and flush. All right, so moving on to the next size here. Making some progress. Just feed it through. And again, just before we get to the top, throw some hot glue right at the base of the previous layer. Rub that off. Okay, offset it. I'm looking at it this way this time. Okay, you can see I'm not putting it right on top of the previous layer. I'm offsetting it a little bit. I think it might be easier to actually see the layering from underneath at this point, because these are all starting to kind of starting to blend all together. It's hard to see where the layer is, where it starts and where it ends. Okay, but you can see how that's starting to look. Moving on to the next layer, bring that up. Okay, grab your hot glue. And there we go. It's always good to, if you can, work quickly here with the hot glue so that you can kind of squeeze it and flatten it with each layer. There we go. That's nice, look at that. That was looking great. Amazing what you can do with paper, huh? All right, so we've got 2 more on the next layer, or the next set of, next size, I should say. It's starting to get a little bit bigger now. Let's get your hot glue right on there. Go ahead and rub some of that off the tip of the gun. And again, offsetting. I'm just looking at it from underneath now because, like I said, it's a lot easier. And once I got that, I'll give it a good push. There we go. Okay, and you can see these are kind of going up. This one is starting to kind of be straight. The next one's going to start going down, and that's perfect. It's almost like we didn't even have to do anything to make that happen. The flower just knows what to do, which is really cool. Okay, just based on the layering. All right, next one's on. Gonna get the glue going. And get that tip nice and clean before we pull it away. And bring that down. Just kind of looking at, there we go, offset. Press that down. There we go. If necessary, we can always take these and bring them down, but I'm gonna wait until all the layers are on because so far it's looking pretty good. Okay, all right, so now we just have the 3 largest layers. We'll poke that right through. And same thing, just putting some glue on there and clean off that tip. Bring that up there. Push it down, again, offset. So you're basically taking this layer of petals and putting it in between the previous layer of petals. And you can see that's starting to kind of work its way down now. It's really starting to fill in. All right, let's grab the next layer. There we go. And go ahead and twirl the stem while you're pulling that trigger to get the glue in place. Clean off the tip. And again, I'm gonna say it again. You don't want to put it right on top. You want to offset it a little bit, okay? Maybe that's not the best vantage point for you to actually see that, but I think you understand what I'm saying here. Just trying to make it as full as possible. If all of these layers were sitting on top of each other, it would look kind of weird, actually. Definitely not as full. It would look too uniform, I think. All right, so that just leaves this last layer. Slide it on, and go ahead and get your glue right on the base. Hopefully you can see that. Yep, just right there. Slide that up, again, offset. And there we go. Okay, so that is the last layer. And again, this bottom layer here, I am going to take these and kind of pull them down. It should look kind of like a half cone, or a half dome, I should say. And we can spread these out a little bit more. But from this vantage point, it's looking pretty sharp. Okay, I'm just starting at the bottom here, bringing these down, going on to the next layer, pulling these down a little bit, just a tiny bit. You don't want to overdo it. Just want to make it a little more full. And you want these to be pointing down just a tad. I'll show you the side view, kind of like that. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at the calyx now. Here is our calyx. I want, when I actually slide this on there, there's, again, a smooth side, and then we've got the texture side that actually has the ink on it. I want the texture side showing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to train the petals down so they're kind of drooping. Okay. So what I'm doing there is I'm putting the petal or the leaf between my finger and the dowel, bringing it up about 90 degrees, and then just running the dowel through it. Okay. And that's going to go on just like the previous layer of flowers, but again, this is the part that's inked, this is the texture, this is smooth, that's going up against the underside. So let's give that a little poke, and let's feed it through the stem, and you can see how this color matches the stem very nicely. Pull that up, and let's get some glue on there. It's real simple, real easy, not too much glue. Clean off that tip and push it all the way up as far as it'll go. There you go. See, that really cleans it up and makes it look really nice. Okay, so there's the flower. And now all that's left to do is apply our little leaves. And what I'm going to do for the first leaf here, I'm going to take it, I'm going to flip it over to the side that doesn't have any inking on it. I'm going to place the leaf between my finger and the dowel. I'm going to bring this up 90 degrees and run it through. And then I'm going to take, and about halfway up, I'm going to bring this up towards me about 90 degrees and run it through. So what I essentially did there was create kind of like an S shape. Okay, and I can make that a little more pronounced by just kind of training these areas again. Okay, so that's how I want that first one to go. I think I just cracked it. That's okay. Not a big deal. Okay, and with this one here, kind of do, you know what, this one, I'm just going to make this one droop. So I'm going to take it from the base, bring it up 90 degrees, run the dowel through, and that one's just going to kind of droop like that. Okay. And then as far as the last layer goes, we'll get to that in a second. But just to show you on this flower here, if you've already made one flower and you want to kind of recreate it the same way, you can take a little dowel, press it up against the calyx as far as it'll go, and just put your finger right at the spot where the leaf actually begins. This is about 1 3/4 inches. So when we put the leaf on, the first leaf, we're going to measure from the calyx down the stem. It's going to be about 1 3/4 inches where the actual leaf begins, like that. Okay, so that's about 1 3/4 inches down is where the leaf actually begins, which means that the stem is going to go just below that area. And what I like to do is just throw a little hot glue on that area so that I can literally just pop the stem of the leaf right on there, and it'll hold it in place for me until I'm ready to wrap it with floral tape. Okay, so I'm going to leave it like that, just like that, so you can see how nice that looks. And then we'll take our floral tape now. Let's peel some or pull some of this out, stretch it, and we're going to wrap that first leaf around using my floral tape. So not only do we have the hot glue on there, but we've got the floral tape to keep it in place too, in case something magically happens to the hot glue where it doesn't want to play nice. And you know, right now, this leaf is really encroaching onto the flower. We can simply just take and bend it down a little bit. Okay, and that creates a little more separation. All right, so our next leaf is going to go down about 1 inch from here. Okay, so measure out about 1 inch. And we're going to, instead of putting it right underneath it, I'm going to put it off to the side over here. Okay, just to really fill this whole flower out. All right, so I said about 1 inch. So we're going to go about here. I need to put glue right about here, just below my finger, below the 1 inch mark. And that's where I'm going to put my next little leaf. Okay, remember this one is just going to be drooping. I'm just putting the stem right on there, not the actual leaf part of the stem, but just the stem part. Okay, get that nice and centered on the main stem. Press that into place. You can kind of press it down a little bit. Let that droop a little more. And we can take and wrap this now. Just get your floral tape and begin wrapping right at the base of where the leaf actually starts, and then go down the stem. Just like that. And that just leaves, that looks great. Okay, that just leaves this guy. And what I'm going to do with this guy as far as training goes, I'm going to flip this over. The main part of it, bring this up about 50 degrees or so. Run the dowel through just to kind of bend it back. And I'll take this part and bend it forward. Okay, so I'm kind of creating like a little S shape with that. And you can certainly even just use your fingers to shape this paper, believe it or not. Why not? And I'll take the tips of this one and just kind of curl it towards me, and maybe this one I'll curl away from me, like that, just to kind of make it interesting, okay? And this guy, now this one, I'm gonna bring this down, I'd say, maybe about an inch from the previous one. And again, to fill it out, I've got one leaf here. Let's look at it from the bottom. I've got a leaf here, so naturally I should put it right over here on this side so that I can fill in this section here. I've got one here, got one there, I want to fill in this section here. Okay, so we're going to go about an inch down. Okay, so again, from the second leaf down, I went about an inch and got that one glued into place with the hot glue. And now we can just go ahead and wrap it. And literally, that will be a wrap. Again, you're going to make two of these. So at this point, once you've got the first one done, you can just rewind it back to where I started this flower and just repeat the same process if you want. Of course, you can take and just alter the positioning of the leaves if you want. I wouldn't alter it too much. I mean, maybe a ½ inch here or there. But yeah, I mean, it's your flower. You can make it look however you want. But that is that. And the cool thing is too, because of the stem, you can kind of point it whichever direction you want to make it look the fullest. Okay, so now this guy here, I've got one in here already. He's gonna be looking out that way. Okay, and then this guy, obviously he's going to be a lot shorter, so we're going to be cutting this stem drastically. You want it in there so that it's just barely sticking out where the leaf starts, okay? So I'm going to take this and I'm going to trim this pretty substantially, actually. Make sure that floral tape is really staying in place. I'll pop that right in there. There we go. So again, as I mentioned, you can definitely fill this with some sort of fill to make it nice and sturdy, but ideally you trim it so that it's literally, here, you can see from the top shot here how the leaves are just barely above that little hole, and the leaves that are kind of coming out from the bottom one are kind of holding it in place as well. Okay, so it looks nice and full. You can see it from this angle here. And I still need to get a little candle to put into this little section here to finish you know, the whole look and feel of it. But that's pretty much it for this one. And again, as I mentioned, don't forget, you can absolutely make these flowers and put them in your own container. Or even put them into another sort of display or another arrangement featuring other flowers from our website. It's absolutely something you can do. So that's gonna do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please head over to our YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button. While you're there, hit the little bell so that you get notifications anytime we release a new product, whether it be paid or free. And if you make this or anything from our new bundle, I would love to see it, and so would the rest of our community. So head over to Facebook and do a search for Dreaming Tree Group, where you can find myself and almost, I think it's 35 or 36,000 other dreamers that inspire us daily. So happy flower making. And as always, I look forward to crafting with you again. Hey, thanks for crafting along with me. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, check out some of our other videos, and also please consider hitting that subscribe button. And don't forget to visit our site and check out our free SVG section, where we have over 140 free SVG files complete with assembly videos. I look forward to crafting with you soon.